Alright then, hey everybody, I'm LDC and welcome. It is day 12 of my Agrarian Skies 2-week challenge series. We have 3 days left, including today. Today is bee day. Today we're doing all the bees, every single bee. But first we're just going to go over some of the various things I've done in between episodes. You can see here I've maxed out my reactors. The two big, I'm stuck now. It's a bit difficult to get in there. Two big reactors, each have 8 turbines on them. So that's putting out a total of 385,000 RF a tick, and I'm using 320 odd of that to power my 32 laser drills here. So we've got those cranking, we've got this cranking. This system is using about 43 yellorium in an hour to power all these, and also throw another 50k RF at my base. You can see here I've thrown down the bucket of blue slime, hoping to spawn just one blue slime that I can safari net and throw through my auto grinder. Right now though, because I had enough both of ender pearls and blaze rods, about 40,000 of each, 39,000 blaze powder, sorry. My grinders downstairs have currently been swapped out for slaughterhouses, and I have 2 auto spawners with cows in them throwing pink slime and liquid meat out into the world. You can see here and go with the flow that we've got this at 89%, so that's nearly done, and that's going to give me some watery hives as well, which is pretty nice. So what else have we done? In order to keep up with my 32 laser drills, I had to upgrade my pulverizers. I thought I'd need to upgrade the furnaces, but the furnaces seem to be doing okay. The issue with the pulverizers was these were getting jammed, mainly because the interfaces I had set up down the middle here to collect items were not going fast enough. You'd get things like sulfur cranking out more sulfur than the interface could accept, or the pulverizer could output into the interface. And so I had to upgrade to these servo-powered item ducts, which are plugging into an interface down the end here. And that means that my pulverizers aren't getting stuck. So that worked its way through the backlog. This might be... You can see all these pulverizers are actually kind of more or less working to keep up with the 4 ore a second I'm getting out of my laser drill setup. And the furnaces seem to be handling that pretty well, because a lot of this is stuff like sulfur and, you know, coal and diamonds, things that don't need cooking. Particularly because half of these, so 16 drills, have yellow focuses to get all the gold I want. You can see we're at 110,000 gold. It's gone up about 10,000 in the last hour, I'd say. But that's also just cranking out a hell of a lot of sulfur. In fact, if I have a look, we're sitting at 239,000 sulfur, and that's just going to keep going. But that's okay. So, what else? I think that's more or less it for things. Oh yes, and the cyclics I've set up here. So these are just cranking through my cobble. I have 9 set to turn regular cobble into regular compressed cobble. So that's dealing with effectively each cycle is using 9 cobble to make a compressed cobble, and there are 20 cycles a second, so 1 every Minecraft tick. And I have 9 of these, so that's chewing through 81 cobble a tick, or 1600 odd cobble a second, or about 5.8 million an hour. So it's going to take a while to catch up to my backlog of cobble, but that's slowly cranking out, and then it goes down the chain. The regular compressed goes in here, makes double compressed. The double compressed goes in here, makes triple compressed, etc., etc., down to I have quintuple making sextuple compressed cobblestone. So you can see here we've got 7 sextuple compressed being put together. It's chewed through, I guess, about 6 or 7 million cobble, including what's actually coming in. So it's slowly working through this backlog. I need 81 of these for each octuple compressed cobblestone. So we're just going to let that number build up, and that's going to be a-okay. The last thing I did over here, just for fun, was I set up a jungle tree farm. This is just, at some point, I'm even gonna... It's quite nice actually, because it's in the magic forest biome. What if I just sort of... Oh no, it's done it by itself. This is really just for vines. There's a quest where I need a lot of vines, but I thought I'd get that going. We've done a couple of extra quests in the interim. Mainly... What have we done? Actually, maybe we haven't really. Just seed oil. Haven't even done the main seed oil quest because I'm using these to make artificial hives. And my QDS is currently busy with liquid meat. I've maybe like thrown some seared stones through or something. Nothing too fantastic. And set up some basic infrastructure. But today is bee day, as I've said, so I've built this little bee laboratory. We'll go over the basics of this, I guess. First over here, I'm just throwing seeds into squeezers and cranking seed oil like a mofo, and these are currently all set to wheat, just to keep up. I don't think it's necessary, but the last thing you want to do is run out of wheat. Over here I have some centrifuges, which are currently doing nothing because I'm not really producing honeycombs. Here I have some carpenters, so I'm making the beealyzer and the treealyzer for the current quest in bees and trees, which I've given a brief start because I made a seed oil can, an artificial hive, which I'll get onto in a minute, a scented artificial hive, a regular scoop, and an apiary. And so to do that, the apiary would require this impregnated casing and a carpenter with seed oil. I've got this water carpenter here to make my beealyzers and treealyzers, as I've said, and there's going to be one that'll fill with liquid honey, maybe later, if I need to make any elvery blocks. Here I'm pumping seed oil into barrels. I'm also to these adding artificial hives whenever I'm below a stack of scented artificial hives. So the Mac knows how to make these, it's throwing them in here. They're getting import bust out, so I'm always going to have a stack of scented artificial hives. The trick here is keeping up with the seed oil production and making sure that I have enough later, the 200 buckets I think, to complete that quest. We're sitting at 70 buckets right now. So hopefully, because I've used a bunch of scented artificial hives already, we won't need to be making too many more of these, and we can start just cranking seed oil into the seed oil quest here and go with the flow. Seed oil requires 160 buckets, 160,000 millibuckets. So that's no big deal. These squeezes are just going to keep cranking. You can see I've run out of regular seeds, I believe. I've got about 3,000 left actually, so the farms are outpacing the squeezes right now. So that's cool. Right, so I'm taking those scented artificial hives over here to my Blood Magic Chemistry setup. Right now I'm just really making rock hives. So I'm taking a scented artificial hive, like so, and a single stone, like so, although I would do this in like a stack or half a stack. I throw them in like so, and in very little time at all I get myself a rocky hive. This means I have a better hit rate than if you were to do it the regular way, which is to surround the scented artificial hive in rock, make sure it has access to, I think, 25 rock and a 5x5x5 around it, which is not difficult, but the issue with that becomes only like 10% of your scented hives are going to actually take and become rocky hives, and the rest are going to lose their scented status and just go back to regular hives. So you need to replenish them with seed oil. So it's kind of a waste of seed oil. This way I just get, and I don't need to put them in the biome or the right place or anything, I can just kind of cheat. I can only do that with some of the types. So the watery, rocky, forest, nether, modest, meadows, ender, tropical, and oblivion, which I believe, I don't know why those particular ones were selected. I think that's all you need though to complete the bee quest line. And maybe a little bit more. I don't think you need the oblivion hive, but there it is. Right, so let's go over the lab I've got set up here. We've just got a bunch of gendistry machines. We're skipping all the other bullshit because it's terrible. Gendistry is amazing. Gendistry is too good. It turns an incredibly long and tedious and involved process into an only slightly long and tedious and involved process. So we're just going to go over what's happening here. So I've got a bunch of machines here that are all set up to first have a chest full of stuff, pump in the back there, and you can see I'm just separating my item ducts with these covers. So all these chests are piping stuff in. So we've got first of all, the sampling section. So what this means is I can take, and this is finished for now, I can take a bunch of drones, they'll pump them through here slowly, so I can just throw in buttloads and it'll just pile up and eventually work through it. This is set to replenish the machine with blank samples and labware. so it needs blank samples and labware, and each drone in here is going to have a random trait of it selected and thrown into a sample, which is output here. So if I'm after a specific sample, it's going to end up eventually in here if I throw in enough drones. So I end up with all these junk samples, and I'm going to be adding them to templates as I see fit. So I've thrown through a bunch of rocky drones to start building up my fertility template here. So you can see it's currently temperature tolerance both 1, nocturnal is true, humidity tolerance both 1, tolerant flyer is true, so they'll work in the rain, cave dwelling is true, so they'll work, they don't need open sky, and flowers is rocks, and everything's made of rocks, so these don't need flowers. And effect is none, so no matter what, there's going to be no poisoning. If I were wanting to isolate a good effect later, like for example the Explorer effect from the Edenic bee, which provides experience, I would set up another template and have the effect section missing there. So instead of a white effect none, it would have a red effect missing, and I would hold on to that, then breed up to the Edenic bee, and instead of using this fertility template, which would wipe out its Explorer trait, I would use that one to isolate the Explorer trait, then start breeding Edenic bees, throw them through the sampling machine until one of these came out with the Explorer effect, and then I'd throw that on my regular fertility one, so all my bees would produce experience. But I'm getting ahead of myself a bit here. Currently this is all the traits I want from the rocky bees, which is why I wanted to throw all those rocky bees through in the first place. It's also quite nice to take off the rocky bee, and that's just going to insert the template in the middle there. What's also quite nice is the lowest fertility. So if I have a look, you can see I have fertility 1 on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another template, because fertility 1 is excellent for production template. So as I go through, I start building up a fertility template, but also a production one. Main difference between the two is that fertility will have shortest lifespan in fertility 4, so as to crank out babies as quickly as possible. The production template will have the exact opposite, and I need to blacklist this on the item duct here. The reason for that is less time dying and rebreeding means more time producing goods, and a fertility 1 means that the bee just continues to cycle and doesn't produce excess drones, which may be something you want to avoid. I don't think it's something I want to avoid in this pack, because I'm not going to be doing a lot of bee mass producing. Actually, I tell a lie, I'm going to be doing a little bit, so that's going to be quite nice for later. But now I have all the traits I wanted from the rocky bees, so I can put these rock hives away. You can see I've got a chest here full of all the princesses I got. These are also quite good, because rocky princesses will never be ignoble. They will always be pristine, which means the young will always live. The generation won't come to a dire end when, based on a random chance each generation. The ignoble stock, the young can die, everything can kind of poop itself, and also the other issue with that is if you threw, you can sometimes end up with junk DNA coming out of your ignoble bees, throwing them through these machines, which kind of clog things up and it's a bit gross and useless. So I tend to ignore ignobles as much as possible. I just throw them away straight away. I never use them. There's no point. Right, so now I've got all these junk templates here, so I'm going to throw them into my ME system, and it's going to take care of them over here. I have a sample cleaning machine here, which has a fuzzy export bus with just a random sample on it, so it's going to throw them all through here. When you cook the sample in the furnace, it removes the data from that sample, and you get back simply a regular sample. So in this way I don't build up just junk samples everywhere, and I can also recycle my samples nicer. Right, so the next step in order to breed up the chain is I've thrown through my fertility box 2 cultivated princesses, and it should have been 3 actually. That's okay. Fertility, the cultivated princess that has not gone through. I can't remember which that was, it doesn't matter. I don't have any honey yet to use my bee ELISA. So I move them over here to my breeders section. These have shortest lifespans and automation upgrades. And what this means is they're going to, once I have princesses in here, start shooting out drones for me. And this is generally how I want to be doing things. I run my bees through the fertility section, and that means that I can then run them through here because they have all the traits necessary to live here and produce happily. Then they're going to shoot out drones for me. I'm going to throw the drones through my sampling machine, and so if I'm breeding up new species, I'll throw the drones through the sampling machine until I've isolated that species. I'll add that species to a template, and you end up with something like this. It's just a template with the species on it, and in that way I can collect species templates. So the next step over here is, if I've used this mutatron, which is the advanced mutatron, and at the back I have hooked up a mutagen producer, throwing blocks of redstone in, so it's going to be constantly full of this mutagen stuff I need, and again it has a genetics labware export bus keeping it full of genetics labware. So I can take 2 bees, throw them in here, and it will ask me to select which mutation I want to apply. So you can see here, I have a Meadows Princess and a Modest Drone. I throw them in the advanced mutatron like so, and it says I could make an arid or a common queen. I don't yet have common, so I'm going to select that. It's going to produce it for me, eating those 2 bees, which I can get easily again later, and it's made me a common queen. Now before I do anything with this common queen, I want it to have the traits I want, so I throw it through the fertility machine, and it starts up because these are already done. So I'm going to throw the cultivateds over here. I'll explain the cultivateds in just a minute. The cultivateds I got from a reward bag, which is going to speed me along just a little bit. So once this is completed, I now have a common queen here with all the traits from this fertility template. So it's going to be able to work at night, it's going to be able to have temperature and humidity tolerances, it's going to work in the rain, and it's not going to need any flowers as long as there's rocks nearby. It's also not going to hurt me. It wouldn't anyway, but if I threw something that would through there, like a nether bee or a tropical bee, they wouldn't bother attacking me. Right, so what I have to do with this common queen now is run it through the splitter. What the splitter is simply an apiary with a lifespan upgrade maximum of 4. And so what's going to happen here is this is going to shoot out a princess and some drones. Now I'm going to have to take a princess and those drones again and run them through the fertility thing. The reason I do that is because when I fertilize the queen by throwing him through the fertility template machine, he's not going to be a purebred of these fertile traits. Instead, his children, or her children rather, will have some of those traits, but also some of the traits from the original parent. If I want to pure breed these traits into every bee, I need to breed them into both the male and the female, and then breed them together in order to make the queen. And that's going to give me, I'm just going to throw some honey through because I want some honey really bad. That's going to therefore give me a purebred queen with all these fertility traits that I want. I'm moving on to the cultivateds right now, because what I really want is one of the next traits missing from my fertility tab. You can see I'd really much prefer to have lifespan set to shortest and fertility set to 4. So I need to isolate both those traits and add them to my fertility template in order to increase my production here. So once this common queen is split, I'll run him through the fertility section and start breeding them up. And I'm going to be isolating all these traits. You can see I've got some extra drones here, and I'm going to start throwing these through the sampler. Right, so I threw some of those cultivated drones through the sampler. You can see I got 2 things I wanted. I got the cultivated species serum and the shortest lifespan serum. So that with the shortest lifespan serum, I'm going to come over here and upgrade my... Whoops, definitely not going to be doing that. The shortest lifespan serum, going to upgrade my fertility template. So now anything that goes through here, and for my use later, is going to simply be, is going to die as quickly as possible, thus providing me more children to meddle with. And increasing my drone production means I increase my production of various templates, which includes the species templates and such that I want to be isolating later. I like to collect the species templates, so with this cultivated sample, I add it to a template, and I run over here to my species box, which only has the Rocky in it right now. That's going to go here. You can also see that I've been running some honey through the machine now. So what that means is I can take my Treealizer. I should have a beealizer someplace that I've made earlier. I can complete this quest here. Oh look, my slaughterhouse is finished. I'll swap them out in just a second. So a beealizer, treealizer, honey drop, and I get those things back as well as some forest bees. I also get some tropical hives that I kinda want. So now there's the Elveries quest, and happily, the seed oil quest in Go With The Flow. I'll just grab this as well, with some watery hives. The seed oil quest here is going to provide me 32 Elvery blocks. That's going to save me having to actually make all those, and they're kind of an irritating process. You have to, as you can see here, you have to breed up to the pollen and royal jelly producing bees, which is, I mean, you'd have to do anyway, but you have to wait until those are done, and then you have to make a bunch of these scented panellings, throw them in with some liquid honey, some impregnated casings, which is logs with seed oil, and you need to make a bunch of these, and it's a long and drawn out process that I'd like to avoid. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is completing the seed oil quest, getting me a bunch of Elveries, and using those instead to complete the Elvery quest here. So now with my excess honey I can fill up my beealizer, and if the fancy takes me, start analysing some bees. I also put through a common princess or two. With that I want to grab the common species. So I select it here, it has not yet come through. Once I'm finished with my breeders here, so these cultivated bees, I don't need to be using anymore. I accidentally took all the drones from this one, so she wasn't able to breed anymore, unfortunately. The same with this rocky queen. Once I'm done with all those, I run them through the splitter. You can see that the splitter can start to back up a little bit, in which case what I can do is simply remove the automation upgrade to make these splitters. And of course when I say splitter I refer to turning a queen into a princess and a drone. I cut her right down the middle to two babies. So my common queen has turned into a common drone and princess, which I've thrown through my fertility machine. So I'm going to be throwing them through the breeders right here to breed me out some more commons. And also just for fun, you know, I produce a bunch of extra honeycomb. What I really want now is the 4 times fertility trait. I want that pretty much ASAP to throw on my fertility template here, and then that thing is pretty much completed. I might add a increased speed to it, or potentially increase the temperature and humidity tolerances if necessary, but beyond that I'm pretty much done. What's crucial is the 4 times fertility, and that really ups the rate at which I can isolate traits. So in order to get that, you can see here, if we were to Google, as it were, in NEI, the maximum fertility, over here, maximum fertility serum is available on majestic, wintry, absolute, frigid, jaded, and oblivion bees. So what I can do is, with access to oblivion hives, usually at this point I would have got myself a bunch of hives in a reward bag, including wintry hives. Wintry hives are really great for this. These are all simply bred versions of wintry bees. The jaded is quite difficult to get early on, but oblivion bees I can actually make through the oblivion hive. So with an artificial hive and an eye of ender, I can start cooking me up some oblivion hives, like so. I need really just one pristine princess with a drone. That's all I need. These might even be of the sort that only ever produce pristine bees. So here we have, and an ender pearl, pristine stock, oblivion and oblivion. So we're going to use these right now. First we run them through our fertilizer. The reason for that is, if I were to take my beealizer, effect aggressive means that if I'm near to these bees while they're living, they're going to murder me. They also require, unfortunately, an end dragon egg, a dragon egg from the Ender Dragon, in order to function. But not anymore, because I throw them through my fertility machine. Now it's going to cover up all the traits that I've applied here. So the lifespan, the temperature tolerance, the tolerant fly traits, all those. But it's going to leave alone the species, speed, fertility, flowering, and territory. And so again, it's the fertility that I really want here. It's going to give it the shortest lifespan, but it's going to keep its original 4 times fertility. So I'm going to run these nice new Oblivion bees through my breeders for a little while, take their drones, and isolate that 4 times fertility, and then I'll have a more or less completed fertility template that I can use to just plow through the rest of this bee stuff. And you can see, from my first 3 drones that came out of my Oblivion queen, because of course one drone is absorbed again to produce the next queen, so I produced 3 excess drones generation. One of them has given me fertility 4. I run over here to my fertility template and add that. What this means is I now have a completed fertility template to throw all my bees through. It's going to isolate the species I need. Later I'll upgrade its speed, and if entirely necessary I can also upgrade its ability to withstand temperature and humidity by simply taking some of those drones, a drone and a queen, a drone and a princess, throwing them through the acclimatizer with sand and blaze powder to increase its humidity tolerance and its temperature tolerance. I'm only going to do that if I need to, because this should get me through, and it's kind of a long process doing that, and I don't really have time to waste. So, I'm going to cut here. I'm going to use these machines right now, and this template I have, to work my way entirely through the bee chains. So first I need the Majestic, or the Imperial rather, and the Industrious, I believe, going up both those chains. And you can see here that I require a Noble and a Majestic. The Majestic is a Noble and a Cultivated, and the Noble is a Common and a Cultivated. So, if I can take a Common and a Cultivated, which I believe I can, right now. I have a Common somewhere. So this Common, with a Cultivated Princess, that I have in my splitter box, because I split some Cultivated Queens earlier, I can throw my Mutatron. To produce a Noble or a Diligent, I'm going to choose Noble, just for fun, but later I'll need to repeat this process with Diligent. Then I can simply take this, throw it through my fertilizer. Once that's fertilized, throw it again through my splitter, and then the fertilizer again. That's very important in order to preserve the traits. Then start breeding up Noble drones. I repeat that with everything. Once I've isolated the trait, I simply move up the chain. And so this process now gets a little bit intensive, because I can have, 5 or 6 different species running at once. So I'm going to cut here, I'm going to go away for a couple hours, and I'm going to come back when it's all done. Alright, so it's been about 2 hours doing this. I'm not done yet, but I just thought I'd give you guys a little bit of an update as to where I'm at. See, I've been collecting species, the base, meadows, forest, up to Common and Cultivated, and then the standard Noble, Majestic, Imperial, Diligent, Unwary, Industrious, standard 3 to start off with. And down here I have a little pile of various species, because as you go through these quests, you start picking up little extra species. So forest, obviously. Honestly, I have got some species, so some Valiants, some Modists, Ender, Monastic, that sort of thing. Pretty simple stuff. So I went through, obviously I was up to about here. So with the royal jelly I was getting in, I just came over here to my carpenter and started making some of the chips for some of these fancy extra bees machines that I don't use, but the quest asks for them. Some of these golden electron tubes that I used to complete the Elvery quest here, just taking the Elveries I made from the seed oil quest I completed, and adding things to them, like the Elvery fan. It's just an Elvery block with a golden electron tube and some iron. So I don't have to make any Elveries, you just get them all. I added them to complete the quests. Then you get kind of bottlenecked by royal jelly, so you have to breed up to the royal jelly stuff to access your production upgrades, your I think even there's one for like serums. I don't know which any of these are. These, I think some of them take royal jelly. There's a one for... Oh boy, where is any of this stuff anymore? I'm completely lost. Here, the serum requires royal jelly. So I got my royal jelly going with some imperial bees. Also here I just built a big old tower of apiaries, and these I'm slowly upgrading with production upgrades. The bottleneck for those is still royal jelly, so I've got the imperials and I'm adding production upgrades to those. And they're churning out royal jelly for me. You can see I've got another 80 right here, so I'm going to make a bunch of production upgrades. The trick with these is they require a hell of a lot of bronze, so get your bronze going. I've set my buffer to something like 4,000, but they chew through it if you're throwing production upgrades on all your machines. Just a quick note on the differences between the industrial apiaries from Gendustry and the alveary block from extra bees, or just regular bees even. The alveary block, in order to upgrade the speed of your alveary multi-block, of your bees in your alveary multi-block, you insert something called a frame. So like a impregnated frame here, untreated impregnated frame. You have to make these for a quest in this anyway. The impregnated sticks require you to put logs in a carpenter with seed oil, so that's what my seed oil carpenter was for over here, just to get through that quest. But the frames in the alveary double your production speed, double it. And so it becomes a question of adding enough frames to your alvearies to increase your production such that your bees are outputting one of the products you want from them. So say for example royal jelly from an imperial queen once every bee tick. You can't go faster than a bee tick. The bees tick once every 27.5 seconds, and on those ticks they have a percentage chance of outputting their items. So the imperial queen produces royal jelly. So here we can see royal jelly is produced by the queen at a percentage chance of 15% every bee tick. So every 27.5 seconds it'll tick over and you have a 15% chance. If you add a bunch of frames to this, 2 makes it 30, 3 makes it 60, and 4 makes it 120%, so you've maxed out your rate of getting royal jelly in your alveary. The industrial apiaries work a bit different. The production upgrades, instead of doubling, where are some up here? Increase your production by 20%. You can have a maximum of 8 of these, which adds up to a production increase of 429%. So here, the royal jelly, instead of 15%, would be produced at 4.29 times that, so over 60%, but still not quite 100. I'd be missing some ticks in terms of how often this is going to be produced. Not necessarily every bee tick am I going to get a royal jelly. However, you can increase that again by, if I just take this imperial queen, the other facet of your bee production is the speed on them. So I've, from a, oh this isn't good, that shouldn't look like that at all, from a cultivated bee I've isolated the fast trait, and so that's a further increase of 1.3 times faster, I believe, for the fastest. That information could actually be a little bit out of date, but it's something like that. So you end up with something like times 1.3 times 4.29. You take that initial 15% chance here and multiply that by your various multipliers to get your chance of that item every bee tick. You start getting things like really crazy difficult things to get, like, I don't know, a diamond, let's say. A diamond is produced by a bee. Okay, you can't make diamond bees, but things with 2% drop chances, you really can't get those up to 100% with the industrial apiaries. You'd have to use the alvearies. The alvearies, I think, are really just not worth it. You're better off spamming these industrial apiaries and just filling a grid with them, because the alvearies are enormous multi-blocks, and they churn through these frames, because every time they use a frame, they crank through a certain amount of its durability, and so they must be constantly replaced. So if you've got alvearies full of frames, you need a huge system in order to increase your frame production to keep up. It's not out of the question, but it's much easier and faster, I think, to go with the apiaries. So, our current bottleneck is, in order to do the next quest, we want a bunch of silk to make things like a sieve upgrade, things for trees. So you can see the sieve upgrade here. It requires silk wisps, which requires silky propolis, which requires silky comb. So I've just got some basic tropical bees going through here. And we're centrifuging the silky comb, and then again the silky propolis to get us some of that silk wisp. So this is sort of where we're at. We've also got ourselves, you know, a bunch of various things breeding up. We've got ourselves a production template now with fast speed on it. We're going to upgrade that further. As a last note, the modest queen with a +1, -1, +1 temperature and +1, -1 humidity still can't live in my apiaries. It gets a inhospitable environment. What I could do is make some upgrades for my machines, but instead of fiddling with that, I'd prefer to increase the tolerances. So here I've got some bees already on max fertility that are just rocking through my acclimatizers. I've maxed them out on temperature by filling them with blaze powder for a bit. Now I'm maxing them out on humidity by filling them with sand. If you start out with a both 1 temperature tolerance and fill it with blaze powder, it just slowly goes up to both 5. You don't need to then add something to increase your resistance to cold. So I filled it with blaze powder, got a both 5 and a both 5. Once that's done, now that's done, I'm throwing sand through. This will go up to a both 3 on humidity and a both 3 on humidity. I'll breed those, throw the offspring through the sampler, grab those and add them to both my fertility and production templates here. And then we'll start to be able to rock through some of those things. It's a bit overkill, but I'm just sort of letting these run while I do other bee breeding things. While I was waiting for my silk wisp to churn out so I could complete these quests, I threw together a couple of little machines, nothing too fancy. Here, there's a quest later that requires 100,000 flint, the game kind of assuming that you've been sieving gravel for months, which I of course have not. So earlier I used these to make 500,000 gravel, and now I've got this cyclic assembler churning it through to make flint. So once that's at 100,000 flint, that'll shut down, and that'll be me able to complete that quest. The other thing I did over here was, oh no, over here, I'm lost. Over here, I just made a ME condenser, put a storage segment in it. It's going to be able to hold the data from all the cobble I'm pouring into it, to make meta balls. So once I've got 1200, that's not right, 1000 meta balls, I'll be able to complete the meta ball quest for the hoarding. Here. So that's what's going on. I've probably got enough silk to do the next stage of bee quests, and then I can move on to some slightly more advanced breeding. And once I've finished up all that, I'll be back. Hey guys, LDC from the future here. You can see me looking at some of these infernal hives here I've made in the nether. Just by coming down to bedrock layer and digging out a tube and throwing down some scented artificial hives. I needed these to finish off the bee quests. So this is kind of a spoiler for what's happening later. I realised kind of halfway through this episode that it was just going to be way too long to fit into half an hour, and I didn't really want to cut too much of it. I'm still cutting a lot, but it's going to be about an hour long. So to get around that, I'm splitting this into 2 episodes, so you can carry on with B-Day right after the break.